back to the Evermore podcast, the Newcastle United podcast, and the Evermore YouTube channel. It's me and Mark back. We've got a brand new show for you here. Our new super duper supercharged post-match analysis, Mark. It's talking tactics. What a cracking show this is going to be. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's a little bit new. We kind of previewed a little bit of it last week, didn't we, when we started to look at some of the tactical kind of analysis and the way that things went in the game. So we thought, rather than just a match review show where we just talked about the game, we'll actually look at a little bit more in depth of things. So it should be good.
Absolutely, mate. Especially you got your gadgets and your toys out, mate. You're very excited about this one. But so just before we get stuck in, guys, a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already, please click that like and subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, welcome on board. This should be a good episode, especially we picked a great game to kick off with. So yeah, click that button, hit the notification bell, come and join. We've got loads of content, and without further ado, we're going to get stuck into this, Mark. So as was said, this is just the most perfect game we could have ever started talking tactics about. Really, mate. I was lucky. I was in the ground. Possibly one of the best games I've ever been to. Just the atmosphere, the crowd, the war flags, just everything, the desire. The fact that we're playing against the best team in the land, and we're going to get stuck into exactly what we did well, what we maybe didn't do quite well. But you were watching on TV, Mark, as well. I mean, did that resonate over the TV as well with you, mate? Was it just a brilliant game of football?
Yeah, I've got to be honest with you, and I know it's probably a little bit hyperbolic, but that was one of the best games of football I've ever watched. It had pretty much everything in it. There were incidents, there were goals, there were brilliant defensive play, great goalkeeping, red card rescinded.
Sensational free kicks, you name it, mate. You name it.
Yellow cards that should have been given, free kicks, potential penalties. It had it all. It was so much fun to watch.
It was a perfect advert for the Premier League as well, and I'm just so glad that that our club was able to play a vital part in that. But let's get stuck in there, Mark. So let's just see how the teams lined up. So obviously we were unchanged from last week against Brighton. The 0-0 draw. Matty Targett was still carrying a knock, mate. So he didn't even make the squad. Dan Burn at left back again. It was a little bit of a worry just before we get stuck into about Matty Targett. I hope that's not long term, mate.
Yeah, it seems strange, doesn't it, to be out for this length of time with a dead leg. I guess I suppose it's the nature of it. If it depends how heavy an impact he's had or whatever, and how that. So hopefully it's not going to be too long that he's out for, and it's not a serious one. But let's hope he's back quickly.
Fingers crossed. But as you can see, we're totally unchanged there. You look at the Manchester City team; they made some changes. Miggy Almiron's mate Jack Grealish didn't even make the squad, mate, which was quite funny. I think Liam Gallagher tweeted, "£100 million player can't even make the bench, or is he getting his fucking haircut or something like that?" Which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, I mean they've got a massively strong squad anyway, mate. You can see that from the players that are there. The big powerhouses were there. Haaland was up front. We were all curious to see how he would do, how Botman would handle him. De Bruyne was there, Foden was there. They brought in Gundogan, who's a great player. Bernardo Silva. So I mean, they've got just quality oozing right through that squad, Mark. It was going to be a tough game, no matter who they played, really, wasn't it, man?
It always is, isn't it? I mean, the one thing to look at them is when you kind of look at maybe Alvarez and Morris off the bench. Phillips defensively, maybe it's Cole Palmer a little bit going forward. There's not anything that really stands out that with a wow factor coming off the bench. And I think that's part of the reason why Pep didn't make as many changes as he possibly could have done. I don't think there was anybody that was going to come off the bench and properly change the game. He's forced into one change early on with that guy going off injured. But there wasn't really anything that I feel that he could have done else. I think, the only change that maybe he would have made for him would have been pulling Foden off, because I thought Foden was quite poor. He sort of was quite high up the field, but he just didn't really seem to do an awful lot when he was there. So there's an odd bench, I think, from City, but it just goes to show just how strong they are when we talk like that, and they've got players that are out of the squad as well. So they're a phenomenal side, though, aren't they? I mean,
absolutely
ridiculous.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, you can look at the differences between the two benches. We've spoken about this before. We just lack. We talk about lacking quality in terms of changing the game. We lack that in abundance in our squad. It's very much off balance, and that's something we hope that the club addresses, in the last kind of week and a half of the transfer window. There's loads of transfer videos coming on the channel as well, guys, I'm sure in the next few days. So make sure you check that out. But let's get into the game then, Mark. I mean, we weren't hoping for much as Newcastle fans, really. We were just hoping that we had a good performance. We didn't get smashed. Some of us were saying we'll take a 2-1 defeat as long as we stay in the game and we try and play well and everything else. And we couldn't have got off to a worse start, mate. Could have. I mean, it was the shape was there. I think the first 20 seconds were forced a corner right at the Leazer's end. Everyone in the Leazer's end was screaming. That's where I was sat. And I remember looking at PK thinking, fucking hell, we're turning up for this. We're up for this. And then, matter of moments later, mate, bang, City score a goal, 1-0 down. And you think, God, where's this going?
Not the way you want to start. I think Twitter at that point was like, oh, crap, here we go.
Yeah, here we go again.
You could almost hear the air getting sucked out of the place for a moment. And it was just such it's almost an un-Newcastle thing to have done. I mean, the way that they've sort of started and how well that they've kept their shape and tracked people and stuff. And if you look at the way that goal came, Bernardo Silva down that right-hand side is sold, well, Joe Linton and Dan Burn completely. I mean, Dan Burn is just on a different planet at this point when you look at where he's gone. He didn't know where to turn. And then you look across at the players and you sort of know what's coming at this point. You can see that ball already before he's even got in position to play it. And Haaland's on the wrong side of Shaw. Shaw really loses track at that point. Yeah. He does make an effort to move to his right-hand side and towards Gundogan after this, but he's got no hope. Trippier is caught with, again, and we looked at this last week when we looked at the Brighton game, he's sort of caught with two. He has to be mindful of that left-hand side, but he's also trying to keep tabs on Gundogan as well, and just hasn't got an awful lot of help in that point. Botman's making an odd move forward when you consider that sort of area is covered by Joe Linton coming back out as well. So it was all a little bit sloppy. And then when you move into the ball being played, Gundogan's got that gap now. Trippier's moved out to try and cover that sort of left-hand side of Man City's attack. And Gundogan's all on his own. So that ball, I mean, Bernardo Silva's got the quality to find that ball 99.9% of the time. It's such an easy goal for them to have scored. And it just sort of looked and went, oh, here we go. Is this going to be another one of those where everybody's up, everybody's wanting to go for it, and then the air comes out and it goes flat? But it didn't. But it was just an odd way to start.
It was. I mean, it's an interesting one because throughout the game, as much as Miggy grafted, and we'll get into Miggy in a minute, in terms of his other contributions, but his ability to track back was poor. Trippier was left with two men pretty much all game. You can see there from that still there that Willock isn't aware of the players behind him, and I think that those back three, Botman, Shaw, and Trippier, need to shuffle over one player, but without Miggy being there to cover for Trippier to maybe go in to get Gundogan's run, or even Botman or Shaw to drop in a Gundogan, because Miggy's not there. He's not offering that extra defensive cover, and it happened time and time again in the game. And I think that's definitely one of Miggy's poor points. He's got an engine that nobody's ever seen. He burns that much of the pitch up, but it's that little defensive discipline that Miggy lacks. And Trippier was screaming at him all game. He was pointing at, I could see it right in front of me at the Leazer's end as well. He was pointing, screaming. The lad behind me was going mental, shouting at Miggy to try and track back. But it's just that little bit of headlessness that Miggy has. But obviously we're 1-0 down. Like you say, the air came out. But you know what? I haven't been to a Newcastle United game in a long time where the crowd started to cheer after the first goal went in. The crowd did not let the players get their heads down, and this is the new Newcastle United, mate. And it's just amazing to be involved in that stadium, watching at home, wherever you are in the world, just to feel that, this isn't over. This isn't over. And the lads stuck at it, and the big guns started to play, Mark, didn't they? They started to show up a little bit. Our star players.
They did, and really, from that moment on, there was another moment a couple of minutes later where I think De Bruyne had a chance through and Pope saved well. But after that, you started to see the shape and you started to see the plan from Newcastle, and when you start to see the way that Newcastle had set up, so you saw this very definitive defensive setup. Now this still is actually quite deceiving because it looks quite passive, and it really wasn't. but it just gives you a flavour of what when Newcastle had to. They very much played with a 5 in midfield rather than a 4-3-3, and every player worked. I know what you say about Miggy at times. He did, but he did an awful lot of work defensively as well, and an awful lot of pressures in that sort of high to sort of mid press as well up the field. So you can see that setup. And this is the real thing, that this is the setup. This is the way that Howe had them really motoring to play high up the field, to keep Manchester City without options, to play through the lines. And every player, pretty much to a man, for the best part of 90 minutes, there was about a 15-minute wobble in the second half. But virtually every other minute was this. It was press. Every player knew their job. Every player had somebody that they were keeping out of the game. So that City's options were really, really limited. They couldn't play the ball that they wanted to play. So this is heading on for 10 minutes. The only out ball for John Stones at this point is to play it to Nathan Ake. You can see Almiron is making the sort of run down that right-hand side to try and close that down as well. Now, the interesting thing with this, 30 seconds later, the ball's at the other end of the field, and you can see the positioning of Joe Linton, Bruno, Willock, and Miggy at that point. And you move on, and those three players are right back in the mixer in terms of.
He's got back there, hasn't he? Miggy's got back to help Trippier there. You can see he's learned his lesson there. Yeah.
And it was just crowd them out at times. It really was, and they sort of. It's kind of almost a cliche thing to say, hunted in packs at times. They didn't let Manchester City settle on the ball at all. And again, you move on 20 minutes into the game, 22 minutes into the game. There's a couple of sort of, from this one thing, there's about 5 seconds in between these two photos. So again, the only ball at this point for Cancelo to play is back to Diaz, who's obviously come on at this point. Every other player is covered. Everybody knows their role, and they're all doing that. How many times have we seen teams just sit back against Manchester City and let them play out and let them move at will, keep the ball, and just keep switching it from side to side and player to player to try and work a gap.
They find their rhythm, don't they? If you let them do that too much, they find that rhythm. They go through the gears, and then they end up smashing you, don't they? 4-5-0. But we didn't let them do that, mate. As you say, we were in their face. It was brilliant tactics by Eddie Howe.
Let's say that there was that 15-minute sort of spell in the second half when you thought, oh, they've got it. They've found that role now. But then it was almost like Newcastle got a second wind at that point. So again, this ball back to Diaz is the only option. And then sort of 3 seconds further on, his only option was to play to Ederson, whose then only option again is to play it back to him, because every other player is then starting to press that much higher up the field. You can see every player aiming for a particular area of the field to cover.
Yeah.
And it was just brilliant to see. This one is a little bit on. This was the setup to Miggy's chance where he blazed it over the bar. And you just see the work at this point. There are 4 players from Newcastle in that box that are pushing City players back into their own corner of their left back spot. So, Cancelo at this point has got nowhere to go. I've actually got this a little bit the wrong way around. This was actually before the other one. But you kind of get the point that they're just pressuring Manchester City into areas they don't want to be. And it made them make mistakes. They gave the ball away. And it wasn't just once or twice. It happened over and over again where they just put so much pressure on that even the brilliance that City have, that they made them make mistakes.
We were saying in the crowd, everybody was looking at each other saying, these are rattled. And PK said to me, he's never seen City like that. And I said, I've never seen City like that. They were rattled. They were nervous on the ball. They were looking around. I mean, and there was one player, I know we're going to get onto him now, but there was one player who really stepped up here. And he does get a lot of stick from the fans because we expect so much from him. But when he is on song like he was against Manchester City, Alan Saint-Maximin is unplayable, absolutely unplayable. And he stepped up big time in this game, Mark. He had Kyle Walker's life, didn't he? He was running at him every single opportunity he got, mate. And it was so amazing to see. It was, I've seen some people say that was the best game Saint-Maximin's ever played in a black and white shirt. And it's hard to disagree with that because the nature of the opposition, he was just so dominating, mate, wasn't he?
He was, and Newcastle looked for him at every opportunity to play him in, and they had it work perfectly. We'll skip on again. This was just further examples of Newcastle's pressing right up until the 80 sort of last minute of the game. You can see Newcastle just pressing Manchester City.
That's the fitness under Eddie Howe as well. That's the big difference.
Exactly
between,
right.
Under Steve Bruce and Eddie Howe.
Let's get back. So again, you talked about ASM. So this is the kind of start of it. This is the area you want him in. One-on-one. He's driving into areas where he's going to cause problems. You've got six Newcastle players committed forward at this point. This is what bravery from Eddie Howe's tactic is to actually have a go. And we talked about this before. It was, you want your players to actually have a go. And this is what happened. They obviously, he must have identified something in terms of singling out Walker to aim ASM at 1v1, and this is what happened. He got a little bit of help, but his decision making as well was on point, and that's something that we've been critical of ASM for.
Final ball was great. His final ball was great against City. It really was the best I've seen.
Exactly right. But it was his movement, it was his runs. Again, it's that ball out left. There was a little bit earlier on, there was one from Bruno that played out to the left-hand side for ASM to create a chance. This was another one. Joe Linton playing that ball over the top into a space where ASM can run onto. The second goal, Shaw playing the ball from virtually on the goal line towards that area. And it ended up being Walker who'd decided to go and challenge for the ball. A huge mistake from him in that regards, because it just allowed the ball to then drop through to ASM, who then ran forward into that space. And this was where I come back to decision making. You've got that option at this point. He can drive forwards and then he picked the right pass. And how many times have we looked at it and gone, oh, you should have released it earlier. It was the perfect time to release it into Wilson's feet. Wilson gets a little bit lucky with the bobble back from, but it's a sensational finish at that point.
Yeah, the first touch took the City player out of the game from Wilson. That game,
completely.
That was brilliant. Just to rewind a little bit, obviously on the last one, I know we did the cross for Miggy's goal. We all thought it was onside. Thanks to the new monitor at St James's Park, which is much bigger than the laptop screen that Mike Ashley had us set up with. Thanks for that again, Mike. But you could see he was onside. We all thought he was onside. It was a very innovative finish by Miggy, to be fair, but. Obviously VAR went and got checked it, and for once VAR got a right mark as well. But as you say, it was down to the brilliance of Saint-Maximin, really, wasn't it? It was superb. But rewind back to the Wilson goal, that whole move, like you say, the header out, ASM running at pace, petrifying. One of the best right backs in the league. Wilson's run, that touch, that killer touch. That's what a proper centre forward has in his locker, isn't it? He takes the player out, and then the outside of the foot finish past one of the best keepers in Europe. Just instinctive, mate. And it was so amazing to see. It really was. And that was Newcastle United at full flight. That's what we can do to teams. And it was just, mate, it was brilliant. It was absolutely breathtaking to see. It was. And if we didn't think it could get any better, that was half time we went in. Obviously, we came out in the second half. We were all wondering what Pep was going to say to City. There was a little bit of back and forth, wasn't there, in terms of them, trying to get on the ball and stuff again, make it happen. But we kept that press up, mate, and then the unthinkable happens, mate. There's a foul on the edge of the box, and we were all singing Kieran Trippier over the wall. And mate, just talk us through this. Honestly, I've watched the replay back about 50 times.
Oh,
it's just sensational.
It gets better and better, doesn't it? Now, I think he's helped when you look at this, because not to take anything away from it, because it isn't this unbelievable
sensational strike. He's on his near post. As a keeper, he shouldn't be getting beat on his near post by that, though. Really,
he's not. And I think he's done a little bit by the fact of Burns' movement to create that sort of block from where he is to where Edison can see the ball coming from.
Do you think Burns blocked the vision just by that movement?
A little.
He's quite a big lad.
It's such a funny thing, because when you look at it. If you pause it at this point and then just afterwards, I think, have I included the second one? I haven't. When the ball gets to about where the end of that red arrow is, or about where Dan Burn was, Edison's moved, but he's moved to his left, and it's not much. It's half a foot with his right foot, and he's just leaned to go back the other way with his left foot, but it's enough. And it takes him too far out of the way. So he cannot get back, because Trippier's hit the ball so hard and so accurately. he hasn't got a prayer at that point, and it's those little fine movements of a goalkeeper's feet where it just takes his balance the wrong way, and that's exactly what happened. And it was a brilliant strike. I've got to be honest, for all the world, I thought he was going in the other corner. I thought he was going to put it in.
I think he was going to whip it over the wall in the top corner. Yeah, absolutely.
And we know he's got the ability to do it, but it was just such a good free kick. It was it was absolutely sensational.
It was amazing. Sensational. I think I saw a stat where I think the last player to score 3 free kicks for us was Laurent Robert. And that takes it back to finally having yet again a player that's dangerous like this. I bet your bottom dollar Pep Guardiola had said to the players all through the week, do not give free kicks away 25, 30 yards from goal. Do not do it. They've got Kieran Trippier. You know what he's like. Don't do it. Don't do it. And when that foul happened, I bet you Pep was going absolutely crackers on the sideline. He would have been thinking, are you having a laugh? I've told you all week, don't do it. Don't do it. But such was the energy in the press and the willingness to get on the ball and win the ball back from City. I think we forced that free kick. You could see the City players were absolutely fizzing when they conceded because they knew he was there. Yes, could the wall have been a bit better? I don't know. Maybe could Edison's feet been a bit better? But as you say, Mark, I mean, when you've got a player who's just as good at his craft as Trippier is, sensational, mate, unbelievable strike, and the atmosphere at St James's Park, 3-1 up against the champions, the best team in the league, one of the best teams in Europe. We're absolutely flying. We think what's happening here. And then City, as I was talking to, actually, we had a City fan next to us, was PK's mate, Chris, top lad, Chris. And he was being very quiet. He was being very subdued. I'll give him his due. But he didn't look too worried at a point. He thought we were brilliant. But I even said to him, this is the difference between the two sides. We're at top gear. When Trippier smashes that in for 3-1, we're at top gear. We are flatlining. We are redlining the motor. The engine is screaming. City had 2 or 3 more gears to play up. And their big players almost said, right, that's it. Let's sort this out. And De Bruyne in particular started getting the ball a bit more marked, didn't he? He started to find space.
They started to, like I said before, that they had that sort of 15-minute spell where everything sort of worked for them and they started to play the type of football they wanted to do. You saw the brilliance of Haaland with his movement in the box just to make that yard and a half for space for their second goal.
To be fair on that, Shaw and Botman were brilliant all game, but you can be brilliant and still a guy like that will find space, Mark, because that's what good strikers do.
He's one of the best strikers in the world, if not the best striker in the world. He's going to find space, and he proved that. He created enough chances for himself to have scored 3 or 4. And the game could have ended 5 or 6 all.
He hits the post with a great save from Pope. He could have had a couple.
One is the one in the first half. There's the one that Pope turns onto the post. There's one he volleys sort of over
just
as well.
Towards the end of the game. Yeah, he could have won it. But do you know what though? Like you say, the lads defended so well against him, and if that's a sign of what Botman can do. There was times I think he got caught wrong side when Haaland went through and Pope was 1-on-1. Pope was so quick off his line. Just a quick mention of Pope. We're talking about other players. That I said in the stand, Martin de Bradford concedes 2 or 3 of those chances. He doesn't save them because he's not as quick off his line as Pope is.
He's right. And to be honest with you, one of those, Haaland just outmuscles him completely. And
I think it was that one when he fell over, didn't he? Botman kind of went down as he went past him.
Haaland is, I can't remember who it was sensationally, who said it online. He's a weird sort of robot. I think it might have been Charlotte from True Faith that said that.
Possibly.
It was, and she's absolutely right. He's just some sort of freakish robot.
He is.
But the only bad thing, the first goal and the last goal were the only really 2 proper defensive issues I had.
Yeah, lapses of concentration.
Goal. Yeah. And this one, I guess it came from Dan Burn, who he just allowed Bernardo Silva just to make that move in behind. And he's almost in a good position at this point. And you can see De Bruyne knows exactly what's going on. He knows now where the ball's going. He's already seen Bernardo start to make his move. And when that ball is played through, he gets it through the legs of Willock. And it's sort of slightly deflected as well, which actually puts it right on a plate for Silva.
Yeah, it does.
And it's just, but you can see Burn there just highlighted as that top yellow one. He just hasn't moved in between there. He's really static. He's completely stopped. and he's just let Silva
he's stuck
get
between
through.
left back and centre back, isn't he? He doesn't quite know where to go between his two positions. Yeah.
It is, and you've obviously got Haaland's brilliance at this. This is exactly it. So you go in between here, and Haaland just makes that little dart out.
Yeah, it sucks
and it
players out,
drags
doesn't it?
Botman with him, so it gives you that gap. And De Bruyne is the best in the world at this, isn't he? So his little ball through was just brilliant. And then finally,
go on, Mark. Sorry, go on.
I was going to touch on this as well, where we cover it. Can we just look at this again and say this is not a red card?
It's not a red card, and I'm really glad that VAR actually saw sense.
Is leading with the studs. It is totally out of control. That
is not.
Cynical.
That's a side of your foot. It's a side of your foot. It's a cynical foul. It's a yellow card all day long. And Trippier made a point of saying that, didn't he? He said, I didn't lead with my studs. I'm not the kind of player that's going to injure a player. That one from Alan for Everton was trying to injure a player. And it was leading with the studs, and he was like 2 feet off the ground. I know Trippier did as well, but Trippier was in control of the tackle, in my opinion. He knew what he was doing. It was a cynical foul. Alan wasn't in control of his tackle when he did that against Everton.
And well done for getting it right.
Absolutely, we don't say that very often. But just a point I was going to cover there about those through balls. We pointed this out against Brighton as well. It's made me wonder. I know we're talking about strikers and right wingers and stuff, but it makes me wonder if we just miss a proper defensive midfielder who can cut that pass out. Who sits in that garden gap between the back four and the midfield. And I think, especially in games like this against City, against Chelsea's, where you've got De Bruyne's, you've got Jorginho's, you've got all these other kind of players, that can slip that ball through. Thiago Silva's for Liverpool. If you have a player that can just sit and protect the back four, like a Basuma type player, like a Kante type player, is that somebody you think that we need in the squad, Mark, for games like this to stop those goals from going in?
I think eventually, yes. I think you have to go down that route, and I think that's one of the players that's been linked is somebody that can play in that position where you talk about Edson Alvarez. I think that type of way he's very, very defensive minded. He's not going to get involved in the play going forward. He is going to be that proper anchor in midfield that is a complete disruptor. And when we'll give the ball to Bruno, he'll give the ball to Willock and to Jordan to then motor forward and then be able to play that. And I think having that. Will it have stopped that goal? Possibly not. De Bruyne is that good, but it just gives you that little bit extra protection in games like that, where you can properly play with that anchor in midfield to just to disrupt things and to be that real dominant force in there and to just protect the back four.
That's what I thought Sean Longstaff could have turned into, but on the actual Trippier foul, so we were talking about in the pub afterwards that. It was quite funny because they said Longstaff was too slow to actually foul the player. He tried to foul him, but he was too slow to foul him. So Trippier had to just wipe him out because Longstaff didn't do it. I think Sean does lack that bit of aggression in his game just to go through somebody. He always tries to almost make too soft of a challenge. But do you know what, mate? It was an unbelievable game. We would have took a point hands down before the kickoff. We were gutted not to leave with 3, but that just shows you how far this club has come in such a short window, and it's sensational. If you add 2 or 3 quality players in there, we might very well do in the end of this window. That Newcastle United team, who knows where that can go? Who knows what that can do? Teams will lose points coming to St James as a season mark, won't they? We will decide, big games, top 4 races, relegation battles, titles. Nobody wants to come to St James's Park when it's like that, do they, mate? No,
and you've got a man at the helm who is tactically astute and who has game plans. You've seen this from other managers across the league, where they're not quite sure of their bearings with their own team. Eddie Howe knows exactly what he wants out of his players. So that's that combination of players that are willing to put in the shift, a manager that knows exactly what he wants out of them, and the crowd behind them at St James's Park it's going to be quite a special season, I think, this one. If you add another couple of players into the mix as well, it could be very, very special.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really exciting, mate. But listen, we're just nearly wrapped up. Just before we do, one quick slide, Mark, just to show you the position of the players. I think you had that there in terms of how high we were up the pitch versus, I think, City's opponents last week that they battered 4-0.
Yeah, so it was quite an interesting comparison to look at, and it was looking at the way that Newcastle set up in that top side against the way that Bournemouth did sort of last week when they went to City. And yes, they're going away from home; it's a little bit different than that, but they were so deep, and they just allowed the pressure to build on them. None of their play. I mean, they're virtually all 11 players in their own half at this point. and it's quite telling that those sort of areas of play behind them, it's 40% for Manchester City in sort of the middle half and the middle of the field, and in Bournemouth's end. It's so even in the Newcastle game. It's so even that that Newcastle are playing almost as much in City's end as they were their own. Despite City having the bulk of possession, it was what Newcastle did with it, and it was just a fascinating insight to say Newcastle didn't play deep. They didn't allow Manchester City to push forward. They disrupted everywhere they could, and you can see those overlaid players where the Newcastle players are just in the right position. They're not allowing anybody to sort of get free. We've looked at that press before. It was just a phenomenal game plan, and it worked. Yes, it was. They've conceded 3 goals, but they've scored 3 against Manchester City, and it's always been one of those. If you can play against that side and put 3 goals against them and play that well, then you're doing something right.
Absolutely. I mean, it was such a role reversal from days gone by. Just one more image to finish with in terms of possession. At one point, we were on top of City so much. We had 94% possession, which I think if you flipped it around the other way under Bruce and maybe even under Rafa at sometimes, it was the other way around, mate, wasn't it? So it's just sensational. It was a brilliant performance, as you say. Credit Eddie Howe, credit the lads. Credit the supporters. The atmosphere was incredible. Even credit to Pep Guardiola as well, who shut down Sky Sports shithouse interviewer by trying to say, let's talk about City's deficiencies. He said, no, actually, let's not. Let's talk about how great Newcastle were. So fair play to Pep Guardiola there, because I think that was absolutely superb. But that's just pretty much wrapped up for our very first Talk and Tactics show, Mark. I really enjoyed it, mate. Great work on the slides as always. And if you like this kind of thing, guys, you like what we do, as I said at the start, please hit the like and subscribe button. Help us get to 1,700. We're not a million miles off. We're about 55 short, I think. Smash the button, hit the bell. You'll never miss any video, whether it be the What's Going On podcast, the Evermore every Wednesday, or our post-match tactics show like this, or our previews as well. So keep it Evermore. We've got loads of content coming, and we'll be back soon, Mark. I'm sure another Talk and Tactics episode.
Absolutely. All right.
Top man.
Well, thank you
All
very
right,
much.
guys.
Take care.
See you later, everyone. Cheers. Bye.